morning. Nice to see all of you. It's nice to be back. 2 weeks is a long time, and so much happens in between that time. And I was just driving out this morning thinking to myself that I so appreciate the grounding that this place brings in my life. And as you all know, we have kind of a hectic schedule, and a lot of people coming and going, and I often leave my wife on weeks on end by herself, and so it just coming back to this place kind of gives me grounding, and so I so appreciate the fact that you all let me be a part of your lives, and that this place serves as that rock for me. So I hope it does for you as well. A number of announcements. So if you turn to your bulletin, you will notice that there are some things on the back. We have a number of things happening at Faith Lutheran this week, including the fact that Faith Women meet today after worship in the fellowship room, I believe. Yes. But I was also left a message today on my desk that quilting will begin today after.
Since the message was left, it has been changed. Quilting will not begin today. And, well, when we meet, we'll probably decide if it's going to start this week or next week. But
okay.
Suddenly, planned.
All right. Well, I'm back next week, so you're staying in contact with me. And and thus, things change, right? There are other events happening this week at Faith Lutheran. We have our men's group that meets on Tuesday night. We have Faithful Fitness that is meeting again on Thursday. And of course, we have service next Sunday. So, a couple of other announcements. I was left a wonderful note from Kent Ellis. And so for those that may know, a couple of weeks back we had a funeral here for Cease Ellis. That was his mom. She grew up here and was a Carlson, I believe. Anyway, the family wrote a very nice note and left us and shared with us that there has been $1,200 worth of memorials that were donated to Faith Lutheran in honor of Cease Ellis. And I thought that was an incredible amount. And so I just wanted to share that with you. And a very nice note that thanked us for celebrating Cease's life and having a very nice service here at Faith Lutheran for her. So I mentioned that. I also mentioned the fact that today, thanks to the efforts of a great number of people, we are all sitting in here without our coats on. As you know, the last couple of weeks, service has been a little chilly. The meetings that we've had in the evening have been a little chilly because we were working on installing a new furnace. And so there's a number of people that were involved in that, from monetary donations to tearing the furnace out, which was no easy task, was it, Brad? No, it was not. For those of you that were involved in the demolition of the furnace, I was not here, but I'm told it was quite the spectacle. So, in addition to those that helped put the furnace in and work with the electricians to make it happen, and as you can all imagine, there were a number of people involved. And so, please, if you were involved in that, we thank you. And the furnace is up and running. Brad was here diligently again this morning to check on it, to make sure that it was ready for service, and thus we have heat, which is a good thing. So thank you all. And then finally, you will notice in the announcements on the back of your bulletin, there is a letter that Lisa shared with you on there. It was a letter from Shelley and I to our church council. And we have a son that is going to nursing school at Augustana University in South Dakota, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and he's in his senior year. And as you well know, that when you're in your senior year, it involves a lot of clinicals. And one of the things that he's been involved in this fall was a couple of projects in a practical sense, where the nursing students go out and work with the homeless population of Sioux Falls. And then in addition, in January, he will be doing a J-term class in Ecuador, where the nursing students go down and work with with the native populations of Ecuador. And so they were raising donations of some earthly things, as simple as socks and hygiene, and also taking monetary donations. And so we had written a letter to the council, and the council graciously has awarded Garrett's program a monetary donation, but wanted to open it up to the greater church as well. If you have items such as socks and hygiene, personal items, there's a list here in the letter. If you'd be willing so kind to share, we are going to set up a table out here in the entryway that we could collect those things, and we will box it up and make sure that they get to the nursing program there in Sioux Falls. For anyone that has visited Sioux Falls or Fargo, I think the homeless population is much larger than we often think about. And so we have homelessness here. And so if you haven't seen it, or if you're not aware of it, it is prevalent, and it's not just a big city problem. So if you can give, it would be greatly appreciated. With that, any other announcements? Any other things that we have missed? Yeah.
Just so everybody, my grandma passed away on Friday. It's my dad's mom. She's in Barnesville, but she grew up on a farm outside of Wilmington, and many of you know my dad's family. But my grandma passed away Friday morning, so the prayer service is at Dogmeyer's Wednesday night, 5 to 7, and then the funeral is Thursday at 11 o'clock. And St. Johnson.
And her name?
Betsy.
Becky?
Betsy.
Betsy. Well, I'm sorry, Kylie. Our prayers are with you. Any other announcements? Any other people who we should keep in our thoughts and prayers? I will offer that I would also ask for your prayers. This past week, our family has found out. Some time ago, I shared with you last summer that I had a brother that was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, and he'd had a surgery, and it was successful, and for several months he went with updates that he was cancer-free. And then most recently, he had a troubling mass growing in his neck, and went in last week, and they've done a biopsy, and the cancer is back, and it's aggressive, and it wasn't a great phone call to receive. And so I would ask that you keep my brother Dan in your prayers as well. So. Other people of concern. Okay. One last announcement. You'll notice too that we have some special guests that will be assisting me in the service today, and we are all very excited about the hard work that they've put into this service. So I just want to personally thank all who have been involved with the Sunday school and the work that they've put into the songs and the practice that the kids have put in to participate in this service. Thank you. With that, I'd ask you to stand and share the peace on this Sunday. As you make your way back to your seats, we'll stay standing. And I'd ask you to use your bulletin to join me in our call to worship. Make a joyful noise to our God.
Let us sing glory to the name of God.
Let all the earth worship God.
God's deeds are indeed awesome.
Come and celebrate all God has done.
deeds are wonderful beyond description.
Please join us in the gathering hymn, Praise to the Lord Almighty, hymn number 858 in your red hymn. Blessed be the Holy Trinity, one God, the strength of our ancestors, the host of this meal, the builder of the city that is to come. Amen. If we have died with Christ, we also live with Christ. Let us confess our sins to the one who is faithful. God, our helper.
We confess that in many ways we have failed to live as your disciples. We have not finished what we began. We have feasted with friends, but ignored strangers. We have been captivated by our possessions. Lift our burdens, gracious God. Refresh our hearts and forgive our sins. Raise us to the new life you have chosen for us in Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen.
There is rejoicing in heaven when sinners repent. Put your trust in these promises. God will never leave you or forsake you. You who were lost have been found. For the sake of Jesus Christ, your sins are forgiven. Rejoice with the angels at this good news. Amen. Please join me in the prayer of the day. Almighty and most merciful God, your bountiful goodness fills all creation. Keep us safe from all that may hurt us, that whole and well in body and spirit, we may with grateful hearts accomplish all that you would have us to do. Through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen.
chapter 5, 1 through 3, and 7 through 15.
Deb, can't hear me, my song.
The man, commander of the army and the king of Aram, was a great man and in high favor with his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Aram. The man, through a mighty warrior, suffered from leprosy. Now the Armenians, on one of their raids, had taken a young girl captive from the land of Israel, and she survived Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, "I am God, I give death or life to the man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy. Just look and see how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me." But then Elijah, the man of God, heard what the king of Israel had torn his clothes, and he sent a message to the king. "Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come to me, that he may learn there is a prophet in Israel." So the man came with his horses and chariots and halted at the entrance of Elijah's house. Elijah sent a messenger to him, saying, "Go wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean."
But Naaman became angry and went away, saying, "I thought that for me he would surely come out and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and would wave his hand over the spot and cure the leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean?" He turned away and went in rage. But his servants approached said to him, "Father, if the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? How much more when all he said to you was, 'Wash and be clean'?" So he went down and immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of the God. His flesh was restored like the flesh of a young boy, and he was clean. Then he returned to the man of God, he and all his company. He came and stood before him and said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel."
Okay, the Psalm 111 will be led by Lily and Bowden.
Hallelujah. I will give thanks to the Lord with my whole heart in the assembly of the upright and the congregation.
Great are your works, O Lord, honored by all who delight in them.
Majesty and splendor mark your deeds, and your righteousness endures forever.
You cause your wonders to be remembered, and you are gracious and full of compassion.
You give to those who fear you, remembering forever your congregants.
You have shown your people the power of your works, in giving them the lands of the nations.
The work of your hands are faithfulness and justice. All your participants are sure.
They stand fast forever and ever, because they are done in truth and equity.
You sent your redemption for your people and commanded of your covenant forever. Holy and awesome is your name.
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All who practice this have a good understanding.
second reading from 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 8 through 15.
Remember Jesus Christ raised from the dead, a descendant of David. That is the gospel of which is suffered hardship even to the point of being chained like a criminal. But the word of God is not chained. Therefore I endured everything for the sake of the elect, so that they may also obtain the salvation that is in Jesus Christ with the eternal glory. The saying is sure, if we have died with him, we will also live with him. If we endure, we will also reign with him. If we deny him, he will also deny us. If we are faithless, we remain faithful, for we cannot deny himself. Remind them of this and warn them before God that they are to avoid wrangling over words, which does no good, but only reigns those who are listening. Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved by him, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly explaining the word of truth.
specific instructions. Well, let me tell you, you guys are a tough act to follow, right? Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing your musical talents with us. Welcome to service. Remember we talked this morning, right, in Sunday school, we talked very briefly about what we're going to be talking about in the sermon today. Does anybody remember what we talked about? Very briefly, I asked you a question. We did talk about highs and lows. Yes, we did. We had some terrific highs, too. But we talked about something after that. Remember the seed that I planted with you to think about while you were at Sunday school? Remember I talked about part of the sermon today was about, yes. About what? A new furnace. We did talk about the new furnace. It's a big deal. Good recall. We talked about losing something important to us, right? Remember I asked you if you'd ever remembered that feeling of losing something important to you and how that made you feel? Did anybody think about that during Sunday school? Yes? Oh, you forgot. Did you wave your hand? Yeah. You lost your dog. I'm so sorry. Were you able to find the dog? No. I'm so sorry. That's a tough feeling, isn't it? Don't laugh at him. Well, thank you for sharing. I can only imagine how difficult that was, right? Yeah.
I lost one of my toys.
You lost one of your toys. Did you ever find it? You did find it. So when you find something, the other end of the spectrum is there's great elation, isn't there? Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about that in the sermon today. And I'm going to talk to you about something that I lost and the feelings that it generated in the very important lesson that I learned from that, okay? So, think about that. Think about you're not the only one in you who is lost, but the really, really good news is that we have a God there that is there in that moment with us and who strengthens us and supports us, okay? All right. Well, I hope that you have a great week in school. We're going to leave with a little bit of a blessing. And Bridget, maybe you would help me with the surprise bucket at the end. Would that be all right? All right. Bow your heads. Dear Lord, thank you for this opportunity to have this children's moment here in service. Keep reminding these kids that this sanctuary is their sanctuary, just as it is the house of God for us adults as well. Be with them in their travels this week as many begin to celebrate MEA next week, so they'll have a shortened week of school. Instill in us as adults the courage and the wisdom and the spirit that we need to continue their faith formation. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. Everybody knows what's in here, right? All right. Okay. $100? We're going to need to up the budget, guys. Gospel comes to us from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 17, verses 11 through 19. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him. Keeping their distance, they called out, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God except for this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." That is the gospel for this week. Amen.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. Chasing me away from the people, Bob. As so happens during sermons, many of you will recognize that I like to start with a quiz. And so remember today during this quiz, there are no incorrect answers. How many of you have ever lost something that has just about driven you out of your mind? That to this very day, sitting in this pew, you are still stewing about that thing that you lost. Whether it be a pet, as we heard earlier, or even what seems to be an insignificant material thing. No need to raise your hands. And secondly, how many here today, just like me, like control? I mean, you wake up in the morning with a to-do list and you attack that day. You are a force. And if anything gets in the way of your plan, you are just besides yourselves. How many of you are like that here today? It's okay. You can raise your hands proudly. You are not alone, my people. Well, this is a story about both of these things. Losing things that are dear to us and coming to terms with the fact that we are most certainly not in control. So for all of you who are afflicted like me, I have a couple of bonus scriptures for you today. First, from Romans 8, verse 28. We know that all things work together for the good of those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. And from Philippians chapter 4, verse 6. Do not worry about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. We'll come back to those in a moment. So, I am asked quite often, even by many of you, how do you keep it all together? I mean, you've got work and church and school and, oh yeah, you're a dad and a husband as well. Just how do you do it all? Well, I always begin to answer that question with, I have an incredibly understanding wife who believes in this call. I might have just stopped with incredible wife, right? That would have been what the smart man would have done. And I have kids who accept that as a family we're trying to achieve something greater than just pay the bills and have nice things. And then I always share with the questioner that I plan my days very, very meticulously. I use a lot of digital tools that help increase my productivity. I write everything down, and if you've been in meetings with me, you may have noticed that. I don't try to rely on my memory all that much. And I keep a very detailed paper planner that tracks everything. Many of you have probably even seen the little purple planner that I use because I take it everywhere with me. And oh, I loved that thing. It was the very intersection of all the parts of my life. Yes, in some ways it was just a calendar. But also in there were notes from sermons that I had started working out on paper. There were business notes from the many meetings that I attend at work and at conventions. There was a completed church and school and work calendar all the way through the end of the year. There were notes in there from the 2 Luther intensive courses that I took, one in January and one in June. Really good theological stuff that I know that I would have used in the future. There were even some drawings in there. Not that I'm much of an artist, but every once in a while I do some sketching. And earlier this year I went through a phase in which I sketched a lot during meetings or class. And there was a particular sketch in there of a cartoon bee that I was particularly fond of because I had drawn it for Shelley and she loves bees. Oh, I loved that planner. I know it's silly to say, but I really did. It represented to me all of the blood and sweat and tears that I've poured into my family obligations and my job and the church and the school the past year. It was sort of this physical manifestation of all that I had accomplished. And right now, I think back to the prayer of the day in that line about this obsession with material items, and it rings so true. But you may have noticed that in the past 3 or 4 paragraphs that I've been speaking about that planner in the past tense. Would you like to try a little bit of a psychological experiment? Try removing that planner from Devlyn's life and see what it does to his psyche. Well, a week ago this past Friday, I was in a hotel lobby bar in Milwaukee, meeting with some clients to which I was trying to sell the form's services. I had been working with the couple sitting with me for a couple of months, and they were so close to signing a contract. This meeting was supposed to be it. The meeting was progressing well, and we had just gotten through all of the pleasantries, and we were just at the crux of the meeting, the point where we were going to talk about this long talked about contract they were going to sign. And then as I looked across the table, the man's face went white, and he did one of these, the universal sign of a person choking. And then, looking at me, seeing the fright on my face, his wife then looked at him and panicked as well, and her face went ghostly white. And both of us began to urgently ask him if he could breathe, and all he could do is communicate with nods and shakes of his head, as any of you might have seen in an episode where somebody has been choking. And it was a frightening moment. The good news is that eventually he felt better, and he began to breathe, and the color returned to his face. Turns out that in the end, we found out much later that he was going through an anxiety attack, or panic attack, as some know it. But as you can imagine, our business meeting was effectively done at that point. The husband and the wife dismissed themselves so that he could return to their hotel room to rest. And the next day, I got up and I drove from Milwaukee to Chicago, where I was due at another convention, and that was Saturday afternoon. And I was standing at the desk of the hotel in downtown Chicago when the clerk asked me for my confirmation number. Dutifully, I reached into the backpack that serves as my work bag to grab my planner to retrieve the information. And you probably guessed it. There was no planner. My mind raced. It was frantic. And after I had mentally traced my steps backwards, I could visualize my beautiful, special purple planner sitting on the table in the hotel lobby bar in Milwaukee from the night before. It seems then all of the confusion of that very frightening moment the night before, I had left my planner sitting on that table in that hotel bar. I quickly whipped out my phone and I called the hotel thinking, surely someone picked it up and returned it. After all, I mean, who would keep someone else's planner? Possibly, what good would it bring them? But no luck. No one had turned it in. It was truly gone. I wish I could share with you in that moment the mental anguish that I felt standing in this hotel lobby in Chicago with what I felt like my world had been turned upside down. This inexplicable feeling that my life had just come unmoored. The staff member on the phone gave me a glimmer of hope, saying, you know, we are a big hotel, and sometimes lost items take a few days to work through all of the correct channels. So I called back on Sunday, and I called back on Monday, and yes, I even called back on Tuesday with a prayer and a hope. Meanwhile, knowing that all of this sounds a bit silly, I was processing all of these strange feelings over the course of these 4 days. This sense of mourning for this thing that was nothing more than paper and a bit of cardboard and a little leather. Even more strangely, I was processing that I was angry that someone would have taken my planner. Or worse yet, I was even angrier that someone maybe just threw it away. I mean, poof, 10 months of my hard work and time and sweat and blood and tears thrown in an instant in the trash. How could anyone do something so dastardly? Didn't they know the significance that that planner had in my life? Didn't they know how much control that little 4 by 6 inch piece of paper, that little book gave my life? I wrestled with all of those thoughts last week for days. And on Wednesday, it made it all worse because I had that 10-hour drive back from Chicago. And what else do you do with 10 hours of windshield time but think, right? And worry. So there I was, a good 7 hours into my trip home, fretting over this silly little planner, griping to myself over the illusion of security that this stupid little book had given me. When my phone rang. The phone call was from my brother, Dan. My brother to whom I referred to earlier in the service. Dev, he said, the cancer is back, and it's aggressive. And all of us adults sitting here in this room know what that is code word for. And with one phone call, my brother didn't just pop my silly notion of being able to control things. He obliterated that notion. And rightly so. Here I had just spent the better part of 4 days of my life obsessing over this silly collection of bound paper that I had made an idol in my life. And my brother, the brother that just a few months ago, after an arduous series of surgeries, had received a report that he was cancer-free. The same brother who just a short year and a half ago was as healthy as any of us sitting here today. And so, all of this time that I had spent fretting over this silly little book my brother was receiving crushing, life-altering news. So this past 4 days, since that happened, I've been forced to readjust my mindset. Worry less, pray more, I've reminded myself. And I've been excruciatingly reminded that I am not in control now, nor was I in control when I possessed that precious little purple planner. The fact is that none of us are in control. Yes, to ensure that we have an orderly life and that kids get to school and bills get paid on time and that we don't miss the important events in our lives, it is absolutely necessary for us to have plans. But ultimately, what I have been so painfully reminded of this week is that we have to give up this notion that we somehow have control over anything. Folks, we no longer live in Eden. And there are forces in this world beyond our control that wreak havoc in our lives and in our loved ones' lives. There is greed and accidents and human failings that hurt us. And there are diseases such as that most vile of diseases, cancer. There are inexplicable tragedies that rip away real things from us, things far more important than just paper planners. But before we let despair get a grip on us, let's remember Romans 8:28. We know that all things work together for good, for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. And we must also remember Philippians 4:6. Do not worry about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. I can't stand here today and tell you what good will come of my brother's renewed cancer fight. I don't even want to think about it, to be honest. But I do know what good came of this past week's lesson of me losing my precious planner. It was a healthy reminder to me that despite our best efforts, we control little in this world. But we do have a loving and dependable God to whom we can turn when all else seems to be in chaos. A God who promises us that he is big enough to hold in his hands all of us, all of our concerns, and even all of the injustices in this world, including loved ones stricken with cancer. I'm not going to lie. I still want my purple planner back. I want to receive a miraculous call from the Pfister Hotel with someone on the other end of the line asking, "What's your address, Mr. Brooks? We have found your planner." But you want to know what I want more? I want my brother to receive a phone call from his oncologist that says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Brooks. There seems to have been a terrible mistake. Your results are clean. Please continue with your recovery." I want both of those phone calls to happen because then they would allow me to restore my life back to just before each of those incidents happened. It allowed me to hang on to this silly notion of control. But something tells me that neither is going to happen. So I will do the only things I know what to do. And that is first to turn to Romans 8:28 and Philippians 4:6. And second, I will try my best to use God's lesson to give up my illusion of control and learn to trust that He is working good through both my brother's diagnosis and even my silly lost planner, even if I don't see it yet. And that is the good news this Sunday. Amen. Please join me in the hymn of the day, "Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing."